Good evening, I'm Dan Wolf. Thanks for joining us. It's been about 7 months since a group asked Duluth city leaders to consider completely rebuilding I-35 through Duluth. Now, this is a rendering of what the result might look like. The proposal would transform what's currently interstate into green space for the community. Now, for a year, the UMD Bureau of Business and Economic Research, with support from the city, did research on the potential economic impact of the project. Northern News Now's Cara Cobb breaks down those new findings.
It can be a time-consuming hassle to get from downtown Duluth to Canal Park.
If we look at Lake Avenue and Fifth Avenue West, they haven't been pedestrian friendly, and so they've been a challenge for us as a community.
That I-35 interchange is something the Duluth Waterfront Collective noticed last year. With a new image in mind, they turned to the UMD Bureau of Business and Economic Research, the Metropolitan Interstate Council, and MnDOT to study the economic effect of an I-35 conversion.
They've seen tremendous reinvestment and investment along that corridor. So I think there are a lot of opportunities.
The groups researched how the project could impact the community and businesses here, while looking at similar projects across the country that have already been completed.
These were the 5 cities that we looked at. The Riverfront Parkway in Chattanooga, which is the top image, the Park East Freeway in Milwaukee, I-95 Expressway in Providence, Rhode Island, the Interloop Expressway in Rochester, and the Robert Moses Parkway in Niagara Falls.
They found that increased pedestrian access to businesses could produce nearly $74 million in spending and support 450 new jobs.
Just the fact that looking at other communities that have done something similar and the reinvestment that has taken place since a development like this has occurred.
This study playing an important role for developing long-term design goals for the I-35 interchange.
This is a bold, grand vision, and so this is something that's going to take time, and it really takes the community to come together to discuss how to take the next steps.
In Duluth, Cara Cobb, Northern News Now.
The research project was just the first of many planned. They're hoping to conduct more community surveys to get a better look into what the project redesign would entail. Meanwhile, reconstruction of West Superior